watching my vlog today. Today is a vlog with my sister Stevie. You've probably seen a lot and heard a lot about her in my vlogs before, or if you're on my Facebook page you would have seen her mentioned lots of times. So she's been very generous today in coming and sharing her story of her miscarriage at 17 weeks, and I had a miscarriage a year before her at 6 weeks. So I thought it would be appropriate today, because today's actually the exact day that it happened for both of us, and I thought it would be a good chance for you guys to ask us questions. But if you have any questions that you may not have wanted to share and you want a message either of us personally perhaps, get hold of me and we'll see what we can do about answering them. My miscarriage happened at 6 weeks and it was with my embryo Pancake. Basically we had a frozen embryo transfer and I started testing early, as I always do, and I finally got my BFP. All the links for these videos will be below if you want to watch them, so the live pregnancy test, and I was really excited. And then I went and got my first blood test and they were like, you know, things are looking pretty low. The HCG was pretty low and I was really gutted. I was like, oh man, you know, is it gonna be okay? And she's like, you know, it could kind of go either way. And I kept testing every day and my lines kept getting darker and darker and darker, and I was so excited. I was like, yay, this is gonna be fine, we're gonna be okay. And then I had a blood test a few weeks later when I was 6 weeks, and she said that it looked like that it was going to end in miscarriage, and I just thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? My initial response was, I can't believe I went through all of this for nothing to happen, like to not have a baby, obviously because we had to go through IVF. And it took a few days actually. The day that I found out that my pregnancy probably wasn't going to progress, I just cried and cried and cried and cried and cried, and I cried so long that my eyes swelled up and I couldn't see anything. And eventually Martin was actually away, so it really sucked, and I rang a friend. She came over and I cried on her shoulder for what felt like hours. And it actually took about 4 days to actually start bleeding, which was really hard because you're kind of sitting there waiting, is it going to be today, is it going to be today, is it going to be today? Went to the grocery shopping with my brother who was living with me at the time, and I started to feel cramps, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. And I thought, we need to go home right now, and luckily we did. I just kept getting these cramps and it kind of felt like labor. It's weird, even at only 6 weeks it felt like it went up and it had a peak and then it went down and then there was nothing and then it would come back. And I went to the toilet after about 2 or 3 hours of that happening, and I just had this huge gush into the toilet, just like a really heavy period, and lots of like clots and things like that. And as soon as that happened, that big gush, I didn't have any more pain anymore, and I just pretty much had like a normal kind of period for a few days afterwards, and my HCG levels went down really fast, back down to 0, and then we actually did another round of IVF after that. So the whole thing generally was pretty quick. It took a week from finding out that it wasn't going to happen to happening, and but it was really hard kind of being in limbo those few weeks where my numbers were kind of going up and down. So mine was kind of more like having a period, but with more intense cramps. And so now Stevie's going to share hers, which is probably going to be a lot more intense, a hell of a lot more intense than what mine was.
Just a longer story.
Just a longer story. So here's Stevie and her story from start to finish, and she's got a couple of things to show you as well.
I found out I was pregnant in January, what was it?
2014. Yeah.
Just after our wedding, and I was actually quite shocked because my youngest had only just turned 1, and I actually did contemplate getting an abortion, and I was just freaked out, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with 3 children and a 1-year-old and a new baby? And I went to the doctors and talked to them about it and thought, right, you know, this is not the thing for me. And we continued with the pregnancy, and we went for our 13-week, what was that scan? Down syndrome.
Nuchal translucency.
Yeah, we went for that scan, and we actually found out that we were having a little boy, and that was 13 weeks, 6 days. We had it quite late. And then the week after that, I started feeling quite funny, like my bump wasn't really growing, and then
even before that, I actually remember you saying to me that you felt like it wasn't happening. Like even before that 13-week ultrasound, I remember whenever she rang up to talk to me about it, she was like, I just don't feel pregnant.
Because normally I feel pregnant. And yeah, so by like 16 weeks, I just knew that he was either not growing or he'd already passed away. Like I knew something was wrong, and I'd been saying to my husband and my friends and probably Nicole, I can't remember, I'd been telling everybody there's something wrong, like he's dead or he's stopped growing, and everyone brushed me off saying, you know, you're just being silly. And so
I was probably one of them. you don't really expect it to actually happen, do you?
No one expects it to happen.
Just stop stressing, everything's probably going to be fine.
Yeah, so I left it and I had a meeting, an appointment with my midwife on the Monday. I think it was a Monday. Yes, it must have been a Monday. And I was 17 weeks, 3 days pregnant, and I went in and she was like, you know, everything's fine, blood pressure, all the usual checks were completely fine. And I said, well, I want you to check the heartbeat, like, you know, because I was quite worried about it. And she checked for a good half an hour and she could hear his placenta pumping along, and she said, oh, you know, he's probably just hiding, don't stress out about it. And I said, no. That just confirmed it all for me. And so she booked us in for a scan that afternoon, which was about 4 o'clock. So I rushed home and got my husband, and we had all our 3 children with us, which was bloody horrible. Yeah, we went for the scan, and as soon as the lady put the Doppler scanny thingy onto my stomach, I just knew, like, he was in a little ball, and I just knew, you know. My husband was like, what are you doing? I just burst into tears instantly, and she's just like to me, you know, because she'd asked me when we first got in there, do you feel like there's something wrong, or are they just doing a scan because they couldn't find the heartbeat? And I said to her straight out, oh, I know the baby's already dead. And she was like, whoa, like, you're a blunt girl. And yeah, she just said to me afterwards, like, you know, normally when a mother has a feeling like that, you know, you're pretty on the mark. And so we ended up leaving there, and we left, and my midwife organised for me to be induced for the next morning. So that night was horrendous. Horrible, horrible, horrible night. I'm quite far away from Nicole, so it wasn't like she could just zap over, and my in-laws were in another country, and my mum was quite far away, so, and I did kind of feel like I just wanted to be alone. Like, you know, when you're in that situation, nobody understands. Even though there is people that understand, nobody can understand how you're feeling right at that moment. So I ended up just going to bed, and I think it was about 9 o'clock the next morning we went into the hospital, and I was panicking, like, what the heck's gonna go on? Like, how long is this gonna take? We're dairy farmers, and I was just like, I want to go home and look after my cows, like get this stuff on. Yeah, let's get it underway. So they induced me about, I think it was about 10:30 by the time I signed all these paperwork, and I think it was probably about 7, or probably was about 7 that I had in my. But all it was for me was, it was scary because I've had 3 normal births, and you know, to me that's how you have a baby, and I had no idea what to expect. It was just really all this blood coming out, like, what the heck is going on? I think about 1 o'clock I lost quite a big clot, like big clot, and I remember screaming to my husband, get the midwife, he's come out, he's come out. And she came and checked, and she was like, no, you know, you're going to have a lot of blood, you've got to just wait, you'll know when he's come out. And I think, yeah, it would have been about 7 o'clock. I was too scared to get up and move, because every time I moved something would happen, and I was like, you know, in a way, if I could have, I probably would have just kept him in there forever. I know that's not practical, but that's what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I refused to move. And once I got up and walked to the toilet and sat down, she'd actually put a bowl in there because, you know, even though he'd passed away, that's my son. I didn't want him in the toilet. That's wrong. Like, no way. So she'd put a bowl in there so that I could, if I needed to go to the toilet, I could go in there, and if he had fallen out then, or come out, then you know, he wasn't in the loo. Anyhow, he was born about 7 o'clock-ish. I can't remember exact times. It was also crazy. Yeah, and yeah, I felt him come out, obviously, and he was just hanging out, obviously, in the bowl, and his placenta was still attached, which really freaked me out. You know, women that have had a normal baby, you're supposed to see this gorgeous, beautiful, happy baby, and seeing this tiny little baby, you know, he was still beautiful, but he wasn't what I was meant to see. It was so freaky, really freaky.
Can you explain like how big he was?
He was like probably the size of my palm. He had stopped growing about 14 weeks, and you know, the midwife had said to me he may come out quite yucky. Like if he's been passed away for 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, he could be pretty yucky, but he come out and he was perfect in my opinion. Like they think that his growth had stopped and then passed away later on. Yeah, so she come in and cut his cord, and I said I don't want to hold him or anything right now. I just want to go and sit down. And so she put him in this cute little basket and said, like, you know, do you want to have a look now? And I was like, yeah, well, I actually do. My husband had said that he didn't want to look at all, and when, like, on the day he was like, yeah, I want to have a look. So we held the basket and had a look for a little while, and then I had to birth his placenta, obviously. And then,
can I ask, because I don't think I asked you that, like, was his placenta really small?
I really didn't want to look at that. Like, his cord, I know it sounds funny, but it was the cutest little cord I've ever
like
seen.
a little, would have been really tiny.
Like a noodle.
Like an,
like maybe, probably a little bit, maybe
well,
2
I presume
noodles.
the placenta would have been quite small too then, because I think it grows in proportion to the baby, doesn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, we ended up taking him home, and thankfully my mum had looked after all the kids and put them all to bed, and I said, you know, did my mum want to see, but as you guys should probably know, we've had a brother pass away. She said that she'd already seen one baby dead, she didn't want to see another one. And so I ended up just putting him in my wardrobe in a cool place, is what you're supposed to do, and just going to bed. I was so exhausted from an emotional roller coaster. And the next day my midwife said, like, you know, you're gonna have to decide what you want to do with him. Like, you can't just leave him there. I would have quite happily left him in my wardrobe forever and just kept him in my house. And so I think it was a public holiday, either the Friday or the Monday, and if I'd taken him in to be cremated, I wouldn't have had him home for like 4 days, and I just knew I could not cope at that time. So my only option was to put him in the freezer, which some people might think is weird. We had a friend come out and I said, don't open my freezer, my son's in there, and he was like, oh, but you know, that's what I chose to do. And honestly, my best advice to everyone, do what you want to do. Whatever makes you happy and works for you, who cares what anyone else thinks, do it. So yeah, I got him cremated, and I got him back, I think the next day. Here's his little box. Can you see that? Oh, is it gonna focus? There we go. I named him Jonty Paul Robert because that was his name. Like, as soon as I'd found out I was having a little boy, I always loved the name Jonty, and my partner's dad is John, and Paul is from our brother that passed away, and Robert's from our brother that is alive. And yeah, so I brought him home, and then I'd brought heaps of clothes, well, not heaps, but I brought a few things when I found out he was a boy, and there was no way that I was giving those to anybody else or like using them for any of my own babies. So I decided to get a bear made with his clothes.
It was a pretty cool looking bear too,
which just sits on my drawers in my room next to his ashes.
Your original plan was to put his ashes inside the bear?
Yes, I was going to get a zip and put his ashes in the bear, but it was going to be ginormous bear, and it just wasn't practical. I'm quite glad I left it the way I did, because I can, you know, there's been times where I've been like so distraught I've just cuddled the bear, and there's been times where I've just wanted to hold his ashes, so I quite like that it's separate two things.
Were the ashes automatically offered to you, or like what other options were given to you with him?
Yeah, because I wasn't quite sure, you know, under 20 weeks in New Zealand is obviously not classed as a stillbirth, and to me, I lost, like, that is a stillbirth, like, that was my son, which kind of peeved me off at the time, but they didn't really give me much advice at the hospital. My midwife was fantastic, that she just said, you know, you can take him home and bury him, or, you know, pretty much they just say do what you want, and I knew straight away that I wanted to get him cremated, so I just rung all the services. You can eat, you know, they do offer the, we can dispose of your, I can't even say it because it's terrible, no one should do that. If you want to, you can.
Yeah, I think that your option was good, really good. Like, so this wasn't the hospital that did, this was a separate
I rang
service.
a crematorium and got that organised, and that was all pretty much all free. I think it cost me $40, and that was just for the cremation fees and the box and everything. The engraving was all free. They did all of that for free, and they done it as if I had a stillbirth. They were so amazing about it. When I went in, I had to sign like a death thing, and when I went to pick him up, they'd put him like on a, I don't know what they're called, but like where they would put, he is a normal person, but you know, I don't mean like this, but a normal person, big size box on a pillar thing. Like, they were so sweet about it. I probably at the time was like, oh, I didn't really want you to do all that, but it was good that they did.
So as she was saying, in New Zealand, under 20 weeks you don't get like a birth or death certificate or anything like that. So I think what Stevie did with the beer and the cremation box is giving them some sort of
recognition.
Recognition, like that they actually were a person, rather than just not have anything to symbolise them at all, because you don't get the bit of paper until after 20 weeks, which is really sad, because obviously he was fully formed, just very small fully formed. He had, you know, his fingers and toes and face, and so it is really sad that you have to reach a certain milestone to have them recognised. I actually think that in Australia at the moment, I think they've just changed their rules, and you can actually get a certificate of recognition now for babies born before 20 weeks, which I think is really cool, and maybe something we should try and get in New Zealand too. So that was basically our stories. We'll just quickly go through some of the questions that I had on my Facebook page.